Good evening, everybody. It is the Safety and the Sportswriter show with Knoxville native Big Joe coming to you on another Thursday night, the 12th of May. My God, this season already, this year is just flying by. I have a lot to go over tonight. We're going to talk football quarterback competition. We're going to go a little bit about the schedule. We're going to do a little NBA playoffs and a lot more. Nate, how you doing tonight?
I'm doing good, sir. Just getting ready for this NBA playoffs. I got to be honest, I'm finally really into NBA basketball. You know, I'm a college guy first, obviously, but playoffs. I keep track of the season as it goes along. I can't say that I watch every single game, but I try and watch a game a night during the regular season if I can. If I can't, one every other night or whatever. But during the playoffs, man, I'm glued in, and there's been some good games.
Yeah, I've been more glued to the NHL playoffs because the Rangers are in the midst of a really unique playoffs experience because the goalie for the Pittsburgh Penguins, they're on their third goalie. This guy wasn't expected to play, and they go into overtime in the first game, and he comes off the bench and helps Pittsburgh win. And I mean, he's a journeyman goalie who now can maybe get Pittsburgh on to further in the playoffs when the Rangers were favored coming in. So it's a great story. This guy Domingue, he's got a great name, Louis Domingue, and probably he'll become a Pittsburgh legend and open a bar there someday. So who knows what's going on there? We got a lot of weird things going on. $375 million from Tom Brady. They really need to give him that to be a broadcast. I mean, sight unseen. Only one, maybe. There's only one John Madden. Everybody after that is kind of a fake replication of him. I mean, even Tony Romo, who everybody thought was great when he first got in the air, now has become annoying. And 300. Do they understand we tune in to watch the game, not to hear somebody talk?
Well, I think this may backfire on him. I'm not sure. It depends on how. I mean, there's about half the people that love Tom Brady and half the people that hate Tom Brady. And I'm not sure really which half is stronger, but, say that that the half that's stronger are the ones that watch the broadcast more. They might not like him. And who's to say that, that he's never called a game before. Let's be honest. I mean, right. They're like, oh, he's already been involved in the media because of his Man in the Arena series and his podcast. Well, let me tell you what, I do a podcast and I've called a game before, and there are two completely different things. And being good at one doesn't mean you're going to be good at the other. Who knows how good he would be, but paying someone $375 million to be a color analyst who's never even done it before, I think is a stretch. If they thought Jason Witten was going to be great in ESPN Monday night, and they had to fire him and pay him to go away.
Well, and the other thing is, the one thing, it's kind of a safe bet because of one thing. He's going to be on their number one game each week. So therefore, we tune in to watch the game. If it's Kansas City against Buffalo, he can't ruin the game for us. We might turn down the sound. But the worst thing about it is we're not tuning in to get any golden nugget from Tom Brady. It's almost like Goodell, or I can't say Goodell, but Fox has no confidence in their product. We're there to watch the games. I don't.
That's my point. I don't understand why they thought they had to pay him $375 million to do the game. I mean, as long as you have someone that's relatively competent, why cut into your bottom line like that? That's what I'm talking about. That was my concern. I don't understand paying someone $37.5 million a year to do one of the games a week.
Right. It's a ridiculous thing. The product brings us to the game. It's not. I mean, I find Jim Nantz annoying sometimes, but I don't go away from the game. I might turn down the sound. I might tune him out, him and Tony Romo, but I watch the game, and it's about the game. It's not about the announcers. And I mean, they've lost all scope of. Are you kidding? $37 million? That's what a top-rated quarterback makes.
Yeah, that's more than he makes. That's more than Brady makes. So what? How are you going to pay him more per year being a broadcaster, which he's never done, than he makes per year as a quarterback, which he's won the Super Bowl 7 times doing. It doesn't make any sense to me, and I really, really don't understand it. And who's on the number one team for Fox this year? Because they still haven't announced that. Have they? Do you know?
No, I have not heard. And I mean, here's a guy who, let's face facts with Tom Brady, as he showed this year. Can't always count on him following through on stuff he commits to. He committed to retirement. I mean, how bad does this guy do? How much does this? If I was one of his sons, I'd be like in therapy, going, obviously, my dad doesn't want to spend any time with me. I hate to say it.
I think how it's people have been joking about it, but they're not talking about it seriously. The guy says he's retiring. He's going to go spend time with his wife and his kids and, watch his kids grow up. Well, 2 weeks later, he's unretiring. And then a week and a half, 2-3 weeks after that, he's signing a 10-year deal to do the games on TV. So
and be away from his family every weekend during the fall. And it's like, it's not. They leave. They got to leave on Thursday night to get there on Friday and Saturday to meet with the teams, do the game on Sunday, come back on Monday. So he's there Tuesday and Wednesday with his family.
Yeah,
and, he's probably playing golf those days. But I mean, I digress. That's between him and Giselle, and then Ben Roethlisberger, I guess, came out and now he's whining that that Tomlin and the GM pushed him out last year. He didn't want to retire, but he's happy that he's retired. And I'm like, shut up. And that's why I love Eli Manning. Eli just went away and started a new career, did his own thing. No big deal. I don't know. And the money in here is like we talked before coming on the air. Robinson Cano gets $37 million to leave the Mets, and now he's going to make $700,000 a year, plus that $37 million for this year to play for the San Diego Padres. So the money in sports is just getting ridiculous, and it's getting more and more annoying to people who actually have to live in this world and actually buy tickets to these games and buy subscriptions to watch these guys play. That it's just ridiculous. So
I don't understand how all these people afford this is my question. I mean, you're paying $5 a gallon for gas. You're paying these increased prices for housing. You're paying increased prices for all your products, your groceries. And then I heard today a guy called in on the NFL radio and was talking about how he has to pay $16,000 a year for his PSL licenses. He's got 4 tickets. So it's $4,000 per seat he pays per year.
That's ridiculous.
To hold his seats at the stadium that he's renting. And I'm just like, that's not even the cost of the tickets. That's just for the PSL. And I'm like, man, that is ludicrous.
I had a PSL Giants games with a friend of mine. His father had 10 tickets, and when they first went to PSL, just to help them save, I bought one PSL, and I lost money selling it back to him like 5 years later because I got sick of going down, having to. They lived in Jersey, and I had to drive down by myself every week, or at least 1 week I would grab 4 seats, and we split up that way. But it was like, this just is ridiculous to do it. So I got out of it, and I lost money on it. And then the other thing, just before we get into the quarterback situation, the schedule is not out. It's coming out. I think it's starting now as we're on the air. But I'm looking around, and let's see. We got the New Orleans Saints against the Vikings in England. We have we have the Giants against the Green Bay Packers, not at Lambeau Field, but in London. We have the Denver Broncos against Jacksonville in London. We have Seattle and Tampa Bay in Munich. And we have San Francisco and Arizona in Mexico City next year. Why are we taking our games and going over there to play in soccer stadiums? What I understand, I don't understand revenue streams, but I mean, I understand they're just trying to get more money in. But how about the fans? I mean, Green Bay and the Giants are 2 of the oldest franchises, been playing since the 20s. And why aren't they playing in Lambeau Field? Why are they playing in freaking London?
Because all they care about is money. I mean, they're making so much money now. I mean, yeah, I heard yesterday the reports that the Broncos are expected to be sold for a record $5 million.
$5 billion, you mean?
Yeah, $5 billion. $5 million.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, and I heard his Magic Johnson's in on the group. So
yeah, no,
tell him
$5
the
billion.
Dodgers.
And they haven't even been good since Peyton Manning retired. And they're going to sell for $5 billion. That's what I was saying with this PSL licenses. You spend 16 grand a year on 4 seats just to rent the seats and have the ability to purchase the tickets.
Right.
And they send your games overseas, for 1 game a year, and then you got to pay for these preseason games, which are meaningless. So it's crazy to me.
And Green Bay is a publicly owned team, right? Supposedly. So why can't those guys stand up and say, no, we're not going to take games that should be at Lambeau Field and go over to London with them? Fuck, screw that.
Yeah, I don't think it was their decision. I think the NFL makes these decisions, and they send these teams over. And I think what was happening was they were sending over these, crackpot games overseas, and these people are like, man, if we're paying this much money, we want to see some good teams. And that's what they decided to do, is get some good games going.
But the Giants aren't a good team. We don't know yet. I mean, it's not in Jacksonville. We know isn't a good team yet.
Yeah, but they're the London Jaguars now.
Yeah,
so,
I know. Yeah, because it's cons, whatever. So, anyways,
I was going to ask you that too. Did you hear that today? That Peterson came out and was talking about what a wreck he inherited from Urban Meyer, and that it's going to take more work than he ever imagined to fix the problems that Urban caused. And I'm like, dude, this team has lost 10 plus games. 10 out of the last 11 years. These problems were there a long time ago. Not that I'm going to stand up for Bourbon Urban, because he's an idiot. But let's be honest, he didn't cause all these problems in Jacksonville.
No, he didn't. He didn't select Blake Bortles. I mean, it's like, come on.
Well, and he didn't, have one, like as I said, one winning season in the last 11 where they actually didn't lose 10 or more games. And then they let every good player walk out of the building the next year. And it's like, that's not the way to run a franchise.
No,
and I don't understand how anyone's still a fan of that team. Kind of like we were talking about off air. I don't know how anyone's still a fan of the Houston Texans after they have basically given up the last 2 years. That's a joke to me.
Well, I mean, and there's plenty of questions to go around, especially with like the Houston Texans. I still don't know why Lovie Smith. I know he wants to get back in the game, but Lovie. I mean, you got to look at that team. I mean, Lovie's got to be getting in up towards 70, and by the time this team gets ready to rock, it could take another 5, 6, 7 years. I mean, who knows? And they don't have a quarterback yet. And like we talked about coming on the year, you got Baker Mayfield being held hostage. He's in witness protection up in Cleveland. I don't know what they're going to do with him. And why they're hanging on to him is beyond me. I know they got to pay him anyways, but
why are the bigger question is, why are the Texans not reaching out? Why are the Texans not calling the 49ers and asking for Jimmy Garoppolo? Why are the Texans not calling the Browns and trading a 3rd rounder and taking on his salary, or trading a 5th rounder and taking on his salary? I mean, you're going to roll out in 2022 with Davis Mills, Kyle Allen, Jeff Driscoll, and Kevin Hogan? No. That's a joke to me. And I know some people are somewhat fake high on Davis Mills, but you got to be kidding me. I mean, this guy was a 4th round pick last year. And let's just be honest. I mean, he threw for some yards, but it's because they were down by 30 points in every game. I realized they were competitive at times, but this franchise is just beyond me as far as confusing goes.
Well, I mean, let's put it in the context of for every Kurt Warner and Tony Romo story that's been in the NFL, there are 15 failures. So, I mean, to think Davis Mills is going to be a Tony Romo, a 10-year starting quarterback with Houston, or a Hall of Famer like Kurt Warner turned out to be, it's really pie in the sky thinking. And to have not a plan B there, if I was Lovie Smith, I'd be sitting there going, really? I mean, you paid $18 million or $19 million for Deshaun Watson to stay home last year. What's the difference if we paid $19 million for Baker Mayfield to come down here and replace him?
And to actually play in the games.
Yeah, exactly.
They paid Deshaun Watson $18, $19 million to not play, and they're going to pay someone to come and actually play in the games. I mean, let's seriously talk about this for a second. Davis Mills threw for 2,600 yards last year, 16 touchdowns, 10 interceptions, had a QBR of 35.5. That's 26th in the league. And
those stats are good in the 1970s, 1980s.
Yeah. I mean,
today's football.
That's not good. And to sit here and talk about rolling it out.
Well, give me what Baker did with one arm. Baker's stats with one arm's got to be at least that.
Yeah, they were better than that. They were, and that was a rough year for Baker, but it wasn't all his fault. There was turmoil going on throughout that team, and they struggled offensively at times. But it wasn't all his fault. He was playing dead hurt, and
his coach should have benched him. His coach should have benched him.
That's why they had this guy. I mean, it's a joke, but why they won't go out and get him when he's sitting there doing nothing is beyond me. And I honestly feel bad for Lovie Smith, because I can tell you how it's going to go. The same as it went last year, where they hired that guy for 1 year, David Pullian. He did a good job coaching, and they kicked his ass out.
Right.
It's not fair.
No, it's not. Lovie deserves better, especially this late in his career. He deserves to have another chance at a Super Bowl. At least a chance.
A guy that won 10 games the year that the Bears fired him. Yeah. He had won 10 games, and now he's getting brought into this. I feel horrible for Lovie. He's a good dude.
Well, and let's go there, and let's go out west. I mean, San Francisco. I mean, I know that John Lynch is in a bad situation. He put himself in a bad situation when he traded up for Trey Lance. If this kid does not turn out to be something, he's going to look foolish. Everybody looked at that and said, hey, he's got a lot of athleticism. We don't know. But it seems like this kid, he wasn't injured. He couldn't get off the bench last year. You have a guy who has a winning record, and maybe he's not the prettiest quarterback, but he's helped you go to a Super Bowl. And now John Lynch knows he's got to get Garoppolo out of town, because the fact of the matter is, if Lance gets off to a slow start next year, everybody's going to be saying put in Jimmy G. And if Jimmy G was to come in and say win 3 games in a row, John Lynch is looking like the biggest idiot ever.
Well, the only reason that they haven't gotten rid of Jimmy Garoppolo thus far is that they know that this guy is potentially not the answer and definitely not ready. If they knew he was ready, they would have moved on by now. I mean, you can't tell me they're like, we're just taking the wait and see approach because of his injury. Shit, he's better than half the league with the injury, and it's not even that severe of a problem. I mean, give me a break. I'd rather take Jimmy Garoppolo over your boy in New York right now, who's got the neck issue. I mean, this is a throwing shoulder, which, you have to throw it, but it's not a major surgery. He's going to be just fine. And why he hasn't been traded is because they don't believe in Trey Lance, and because he doesn't want to look stupid when Trey Lance sucks. He wants to have an option that where they can keep things rolling, which they were able to do last year.
Yeah, at least he'd be winning that. If he can keep there and win, fine. But if he can't, who knows? And then, and then we'll stick on the West Coast. We got Seattle, who are tying there to Geno Smith and Drew Lock.
Yeah, I really just don't believe them. I keep hearing Pete Carroll. I keep hearing John Schneider talk about how they're happy with Drew Lock, Geno Smith, and Jacob Eason. And I don't believe a damn word of it. I really don't. I mean, I think they're going to add somebody, and I think they're waiting to see who they can get. And I think their goal, in my opinion, is to get Baker, but they want the Browns to release him. And they know the Browns are up against it. The Browns have already paid $46 million for Deshaun Watson's services this year. They know that Baker's not playing there. That's the idiocy of the Brown and Jimmy Haslam's move was he threw all his cards down on the table before it was time to call.
Right.
I mean, that's ridiculous. I mean, they've already got their backup. They've already got this guy paid for the year. And then they've got the other guy who's getting $19 million. No one wants to take that salary on when they know the Browns aren't going to pay him or play him as their starter.
And the thing about it is Baker, maybe not the total package, but he's kind of built like Wilson was. He kind of he's not as good a runner, but everything else translates to what Wilson used to do up there. And I just think he fits into Pete Carroll's scheme better than most quarterbacks do. Plus, the fact that Pete Carroll's 70 years old. Does he want to go through a long rebuilding? I mean, you don't know. You don't know what quarterback you're going to get next year. You don't know if you're going to get Stroud or whoever coming out, and you don't know if they're going to fall in your lap. So, I mean, I think if I was Pete Carroll, I'd be like, yeah, I better get a good quality or NFL quality quarterback to run my team.
Well, and we talked about last year, Davis Mills' numbers a minute ago. Well, let's be 100% honest. They're a million times better than Drew Lock. Drew Lock couldn't even beat out Teddy Bridgewater. Right. He was essentially Teddy Bridgewater's backup and only played in the games where Teddy could not go. And in those games, he threw for 787 yards and 2 touchdowns and 2 interceptions. He had a quarterback rating of 23.4. I mean, there was nothing good about what he did, and nothing that I saw that led me to believe that he's going to be a competent starter. And I keep hearing that, oh, he had all this talent. Oh, you know, they were making it. Schneider was making excuses for him in several of the interviews I heard. And I'm like, what excuses do you have for this guy? They had a solid defense. They had a solid team, a decent coaching plan. The only thing that they didn't have was a quarterback. And that was because Teddy Bridgewater is not that great. And this guy couldn't even beat him out. So don't tell me that you're going to roll with Drew Lock for the season, because I don't believe it. If you do, you're going to win 3 games.
Well, yeah. And Drew Lock can't do it, and we all know what Geno Smith is. We've seen the Geno Smith play. I mean, we saw him with the Jets and fail. We've seen him fail as a backup in how many different places. I mean, Geno Smith was a kid who had a couple of good games at West Virginia and parlayed it into Rex Ryan, thinking he could be a professional quarterback. And we all know Rex Ryan does not know a lot about being a quarterback. He might be a good defensive coordinator, but Mark Sanchez, Geno Smith, they're not a quarterback whisperer.
No, and Geno honestly played pretty decent last year when he was thrust into duty in game 1. And then it just got horrible after that. I don't know if you remember, but the first game they played Jacksonville, and he was like 20 of 24 for like 200 yards, 2 touchdowns. And then the wheels fell off after that, and he was horrible. They lost 3 in a row, and they rushed Russell Wilson back onto the field when he wasn't even 100%.
I mean, you know better than me because you played defense at a college level. Once you see the tape of what the guy can and can't do, defensive coordinators know what to do. I mean, you might surprise them for a freaking week, but, you know, by the time they look on tape and say, oh, he can't throw deep. Okay.
Yeah.
Let's bring the safeties up. Don't worry about it. We're going to take away the crossing routes. We're going to take away everything short and let him throw deep. If he beats us once, great. But he's probably going to miss 10 times.
Yeah, there's no way that I think they're going to just roll it out with those 2 guys. As I mentioned, I think, you know, they're not rebuilding up there. I don't think they are. I think they have the tools to win. I mean, I was a little worried and thought they may be headed for a complete rebuild when I saw they weren't signing back Dwayne Brown. But honestly, he's getting up there in years. And they replaced him with Charles Cross, who I thought was the best left tackle in the draft. And they came back, you know, a round later and got the right tackle who's going to start for them for 10 years. So they've got the tackles solidified. They've got good running backs. I love their wide receiver population. And their defense was getting better at the end of last year. So really the only thing they're missing without Russell is a quarterback. And I think they're just waiting to see which one they can get their hands on because I don't think that San Francisco wants to trade in division.
Well, and when there was a quarterback move today that was announced, that I don't think it's a big thing at all. I just think that it's a comfort level. Stidham goes from the Patriots to the Raiders.
Correct.
So, I mean, that's just a backup move.
Well, yeah, I mean, it's worth talking about, though, because essentially they've got Derek Carr, they had Nick Mullins, and they had Garrett Gilbert. And, you know, Nick Mullins has not been great. He had a couple of decent games a few years ago when he was in San Francisco,
Yep.
and he was thrust into duty when Garoppolo got hurt, and then their secondary backup got hurt, and he played decent for about a week, and then he went downhill really quickly. I think that even adding Stidham, this Raiders team is going to be in big time trouble if Derek Carr goes down. I don't trust Nick Mullins. I don't trust Jared Stidham. If he gets injured, their year is over.
Well, I mean, this is the one thing we got to look at too, is the price of starting quarterbacks as it keeps rising. When you're talking about playing guys $25-30 million a year, your backups you can't spend a lot on backups. These guys, you can't develop backups. I mean, you're going to have to take the crapshoot. I mean,
true, but there's smart ways of doing it. There's ways of getting, you just have to be kind of crafty. You've got to get a guy that can go 2-2. You've got to get a guy that can maybe win you 2 games out of 4. And that's not asking a lot if you have a decent team around him. But I don't believe that either one of these guys can win 2 out of 4. Nick Mullins, Jared Stidham?
No,
I don't think so.
If you look at it's a very short list of the guys that you trust like that. Tyrod Taylor, probably. Case Keenum, probably. Fitzpatrick, if he came back, yes. But outside of that, there's not many quarterbacks that you really backup quarterbacks that could fit that mold of what you're saying about guy who could do. If my quarterback's down, my number one's down for 4 games, could fill in and at least keep us 2-2, if not 3-1.
Well, Nick Foles is on the street.
Oh, that's right. Foles, I forgot about him.
Foles is on the street, and look at the Dolphins. They went out and Teddy Bridgewater passed his physical, and they signed him to back up Tua because Tua's had some injury problems. So, Teddy's not great, but Teddy can go 2-2. You talk about Baltimore. Lamar has been very, very consistent with staying on the field until last year. But when he went down, Tyler Huntley proved that he could potentially be a guy that could go 2-2. I mean, there's ways of getting guys that can do it, and I just don't think the Raiders. Let's be honest. Let's say Derek Carr gets dinged and he goes down in week 2, rips his ACL. I mean, their season's over.
Yeah,
completely over. And
especially in that division.
Yeah, especially that's what I'm saying. You're going against Patrick Mahomes. You're going against Justin Herbert. You're going against every team in that division is good now with Russell Wilson coming into Denver. And that's 2 times a year for each one of those teams. You lose Derek Carr and have nobody that can come in and even throw the football with Nick Mullins and that piece of trash from New England. You're in big time trouble.
And then we'll go over to Pittsburgh. I mean, they've got their quarterback of the future, supposedly, and they got him in the draft. I understand why they went out and got Trubisky. You weren't sure that Kenny Pickett was going to be there. In a slim quarterback draft, you had to go out and get yourself a quarterback, an NFL caliber quarterback, which Trubisky, I guess he is. I mean, he did do some good things in Chicago, a lot of bad things in Chicago, but he also gained a great reputation sitting on the bench in Buffalo. So, I mean, I would have thought Trubisky might have gone to the Giants. That kind of made sense to me, to go with Daboll, who he was with for a year. But, what do you think about that?
Yeah, I think the situation in Pittsburgh is definitely better than some of the other situations. I mean, I'm not totally in love with any of these 3 guys. But to be honest, I think it's a healthy competition. I mean, Mason Rudolph has shown at times to potentially be a guy that can be, like we talked about, maybe be a 500 guy if he has to play. But he's not going to be their long-term solution. They've already decided that. But having him there, having Trubisky there to both compete, and then Kenny Pickett, I mean, if you got a good option there, you go out, you run these 3 guys through camp, you decide who's the best one, and then you go with him. I mean, if Kenny Pickett's not ready and you can tell that he's just not ready for the NFL game, one of these 2 guys can potentially win with what Pittsburgh has around him.
I'd be shocked if it wasn't Trubisky starting the year. I just, we saw 2 years ago that Mike Tomlin is one of the best coaches in football when he had the Duck guy and Mason Rudolph. When Roethlisberger was out for the year, how he squeezed out an 8-8 record with not too much talent at quarterback. So I think, even if you need Trubisky for the first month, maybe 6 weeks, I'm sure that under Tomlin's guidance, they'll have an above 500 or at least a 500 record.
Well, honestly, if you look back to the year when Trubisky took the Bears to the playoffs, he showed at times that he can be beyond competent. And now he's had time to be humbled a little bit. He's had time to sit back, watch the tape, learn about what the things he did well, what the things he did wrong. And he also got to watch Josh Allen for a year. And I think that's the biggest thing with him. Josh Allen's one of the top 3 quarterbacks in this league. And if you want to learn what you should do as a starting quarterback to help your team win, watching Josh Allen's a pretty good spot to look at.
And Trubisky kind of is a poor man's Josh Allen. He doesn't have his arm, but he does have the legs. He does have – they kind of play alike, but not – he's not as skilled as Josh Allen. But like I said, he's a poor man's Josh Allen. His skill set translates, he's just not as good.
Yeah, well, I mean, if you think back to 2018, went to the playoffs, Chicago was 11-3. I mean, that's a pretty good record with him starting 14 of those games. And starting 14 games, he went 11-3. I mean, that's a pretty good record for somebody who in 14 games threw for 3,200 yards, 24 touchdowns, 12 interceptions. And then, like you said, he was able to also run the ball a little bit. And that particular season, he ran for over 400 yards on the ground and scored another 3 touchdowns with his legs. So, honestly, that year he looked pretty good. And then let's be 100% honest. Justin Fields is set up for failure right now in Chicago because they have no weapons. It's the same problem that they had when Mitch Trubisky was there. They've drafted another quarterback, but they haven't fixed any of the problems that the previous quarterback had. That is the definition of crazy and stupid.
Right. No, I agree. Justin Fields and the quarterback they brought it. Who did they pick up? Peterman to back him up? How's that going to help him? How's that going to help him?
It's not going to help him at all. You're not unless you want him to learn how to suck. Getting Nate Peterman is not a good idea. This is a guy who threw for 6 or 7 interceptions and a half. They've got Trevor Siemian and Nathan Peterman as the backup options. I mean, neither Justin in the film room because neither one of those guys knows what the hell they're doing. Yeah,
the Bears better hope he stays healthy. Otherwise, it can be very, very, very sad. Down in Tennessee, we talked about this on draft day or our draft last week. They went out and got Malik. And, of course, the incumbent quarterback's not too happy about it. And apparently, the rumors have it that the coach isn't really happy either with Malik Willis being drafted or what they let get away with Brown. The last we saw of Tannehill, not impressive against Cincinnati in the playoffs. His first pass and his last pass, interceptions. And not exactly the greatest thing in between. What do you think about the Tennessee quarterback situation?
Yeah, I like it. I like what they did. I mean, let's be brutally honest, as we are all the time on the show. Tannehill had one of his best years, if not his best year, in his career last year. He threw for almost 4,000 yards, 21 touchdowns. The only real problem that he had was taking care of the football. 14 interceptions. He had some fumbles. That's the only problem really that he had. I mean, the Houston game, he threw 4 interceptions. And then, obviously the playoff game, he threw 3. So there's 7 interceptions in 2 games. So, let's see if adding Derrick Henry back into the mix calms him down and lets him get back to what he was doing the year before when he was really throwing the football well and wasn't throwing it to the other team once or twice a game. Let's see if he gets back there. If he doesn't, you've got a guy pushing him who you can potentially, if the season's shot and Tannehill just isn't playing well, you've got a younger guy that you can put out there. Now, I don't think Malik Willis is ready to start week 1. I just don't see it. I mean, if you look back at the tape last year when Liberty played against really good Division I competition, Ole Miss, Virginia Tech, those games, Malik struggled. The first read wasn't open. And when he had to go to his second and third reads, it just didn't look as pretty. So I think that can be learned, though. That's teachable stuff. So if you give him a little bit of time to learn and let him, work his way into the NFL, he could potentially be a good quarterback. He's got the athletic ability. So I like what the Titans have, and I love their situation way more than I did last year. Remember when we did our show right before the season, we broke down the quarterback situations throughout the league. I thought the Titans were one of the worst because if Tannehill was gone, they were completely done. And I don't feel that way with Malik. He's definitely an upgrade over what they had before.
All right, let's come up to my Giants here, like we talked about it. Daniel Jones, we don't know. The neck supposedly is going to be fine, but as I know that the neck was the thing that put Peyton Manning's career in jeopardy and finally finished him off. It's not an injury that they talk about a lot, but it's an injury that potentially it has ruined a lot of careers. Your neck, I mean, it's your back. It runs your body. You got Tyrod Taylor, but this is a team that's supposed to be starting to take the neck or take their first step out of what has been a mess for 5, 6, 7 years. And with the question at their biggest spot, quarterback.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. I think it's like the best kept secret in all the country right now is, what's the situation with Daniel Jones? I don't know, but they're not, obviously they would have given him the extension and signed him up long term if he was 100% healthy and they were 100% sold. So I really think this is it for him right now. I mean, he either shows that he's gotten way better, or I think they draft a quarterback next year. I mean, that's just my feeling. And they've got a guy in Tyrod Taylor who, you don't really want to have start for the entire season. But if you had to throw Tyrod out there for 6 or 7 games, I think you can feel fairly decent about it. It's definitely an upgrade over last year's situation. But this is Daniel Jones's team, and he's going to be their starting quarterback because they have to figure out if he's going to be the long-term solution right now.
Yeah, as a lifelong Giant fan, and I don't want to say a Giant historian, but I do remember, Phil Simms, his first 4 or 5 years, he struggled. He was injured a lot. Everybody thought he wasn't the answer. He was a guy that wasn't a popular draft pick coming out of Morehead State. It took him a while to even get Bill Parcells' confidence. But at that time also, the Giants had Lawrence Taylor, Harry Carson. They had a defense that could keep them in games. They got Rob Carpenter from Houston in a huge trade that no one ever talks about these days, how big a guy Rob Carpenter was turning the Giants franchise around when he came to town in 1981, because he was a running back that they could hand the ball to 40 times a game. It was a different NFL back then. If you had a good defense and you had a running back who could get you 4 yards a carry, 3 yards a carry, and give him the ball 40 times a game, well, you play the clock, you win 13-10. It's not played that way anymore.
It's not, but at the time it was. And but the thing that I will say about Daniel Jones is, I as far as like comparing him to the other guy from New York, Sam Darnold, at least I've seen times in games where I've said, he could maybe do it. That this looks good. Like I've seen some flashes. He just hasn't been able to put it together long term. He hasn't been able to stay consistently good across a 10-game stretch. And that's what he has to do if he wants to get the big contract and be a franchise guy. And it's now or never for him. I think they've been fairly patient with him, but this is going to be it for him if he can't get it proven that he's the guy.
And I mean, especially, as well as I do, you learn by being on the field, not in the film room. I mean, that was the greatest thing about Eli. He was always on the field. So whatever the improvements he made was out there in live traffic. So that's the only way to learn. And let's go down to the 95, down to Washington, to the Commanders, with a new commander there, Carson Wentz. But, he comes with a lot of baggage and a lot of doubts. And they're a team that, going out, they've got some wide receivers, they've got some weapons. What do you think about Wentz and their quarterback solutions?
Honestly, I feel like Wentz was the fall guy last year. The Colts didn't make the playoffs. They were right there. They collapsed at the end, and they blamed everything on him. And let's be honest, he didn't play great, but he had a pretty decent season. I mean, 3,600 yards, 27 touchdowns, 7 interceptions. I thought he looked way better last year than he did the year previous in Philadelphia. Yeah. I thought he looked way better. He completed around 63% of his passes, and that was, hurt by a couple of rough games. But all in all, I was pretty impressed with him, and this is obviously his last shot. So I think he knows that. I think he realizes he's got to be better. He's got to clean it up, and it's now or never for him. And they've got a better team around him. I like what it's hard to say this, but Commanders, whatever their name is now, yeah. I like what they've done, adding Brian Robinson Jr. to that backfield of McKissick and Gibson, and then McLaurin, Samuel, Dotson. Logan Thomas could potentially maybe be back healthy for once. De'Ami Brown is a backup wide receiver, Cam Sims. They have so many more weapons than they've had the last few years, and they just need somebody to use those guys. And I don't know. I kind of feel like Carson Wentz might surprise some people this year, and I think they're in good shape. And if he doesn't, Taylor Heineke's proven that he can play if he has to, and then they drafted Sam Howell too. So they've got 3 guys that can play potentially if they have to.
Well, the one thing is the question mark I'd have for he doesn't. Can those 3 running backs add up to what Taylor was behind him last year when Taylor was at his best? A guy who, see, that's that's the one thing is like his stats. I'm not going to say that I didn't watch a lot of the Colts last year because they weren't on a lot around here, so I can't say I watched Wentz that much. But I mean, when Taylor was running like he did, I mean, all he had to do was play action pass, and he had a lot of people open because the safeties had to cheat up on Taylor. So we'll see.
That's true, but Antonio Gibson did rush for 1,000 yards last year, only on 258 attempts. So he averaged 4 yards a carry. He was very solid when he was healthy. And if Brian Robinson can match anything like what he did last year for Alabama, they're in good shape. And then, like I said, I like J.D. McKissick. I like the change of direction, the kind of quickness and speed that he showed. He averaged 4.5 a carry. So with those 3 guys, you're not going to have Jonathan Taylor per se, but you, as a collective group, I think you can get pretty close.
Well, that's what he needs. And now we go down to how long is Sam Darnold going to be allowed? What kind of a leash is he going to be on? He can't be on a very long leash. I mean, not if the coach wants to. The rule wants to keep his job. I mean, I don't even know if Corral is the answer. There's another team where you look and you go, you'd rather put your ponies on this one rather than get Baker Mayfield into town? I mean, I don't get it.
I would take Baker Mayfield in a heartbeat if I was the Carolina Panthers. And the only reason that they are not is because the general manager is brand new. You got 2 different timelines going on here, and that's what I'm looking at is you got a coach who signed this 7-year mega deal who's on the 3rd year of it and has done nothing. And then you've got a general manager that's in year 1, and he feels like he's got time to play with. But Matt Rule doesn't. If Matt Rule doesn't win right now, he's going to be on the street. And I just don't see any way this team can win with the 3 quarterbacks they've got. I mean, Sam Darnold's a joke. Why he's still even considering putting him out there as a starting quarterback, I will never know. Matt Corral, where they got him in the draft, I think is okay. But to have not even another guy to compete with Sam Darnold is a joke to me. And this team is destined to be in the bottom of the division if they don't get somebody like Jimmy Garoppolo in there very quick.
And I hear that Christian McCaffrey's on the trading block or something. They're kind of discussing.
Good luck.
Out of time.
Good luck getting that contract.
Yeah. When's the last time he was healthy? 2018, 2017?
Yeah. I mean, this guy is a very talented player, but he just has not been able to stay on the field. And the main reason is because their quarterback play has been so bad, they've had to overuse him. They've had to throw it to him. They've had to hand it to him. They've had to get to him the damn ball every time because they don't have anybody that can throw it down the field. And it's taken its toll on him. And you can't trade him at this point because he's been so dinged up. No one wants that contract. And, I can see him potentially getting released after this year.
I can maybe sit there and I know I'm not totally accurate, but I think when they played the Jets, Sam Darnold either dumped the ball off to him or handed the ball off to McCaffrey. I think it was something like 9 of the first 11 plays.
I believe that. And, I don't see how they think that they can roll out there with this. I mean, I really don't. I mean, Sam Darnold was a train wreck last year. And, they won a couple of games at the beginning of the year. And how they did that, I will never know. I mean, the competition they were playing weren't good, but they got really lucky. I mean, let's go back over this for 1 second. Sammy Darnold, who looks like he's about to take a dump in every picture of him, if you've ever looked at him, 2,500 yards, 9 touchdowns, 13 interceptions, a QBR of 33.2, and also, completed around 50% of his passes. I mean, that's just horrible. And they lost 4 out of their last 5 games with him, at the helm. So I don't know what to do.
Told everybody when the Jets drafted him, all my friends around here, I said, I don't see it. I didn't see it at USC. He had one really good game against Penn State, one good bowl game. Other than that, yeah, he beat UCLA a couple of times, and he had a good game there. But I mean, he was never in the Heisman. He always had a lot of interceptions in a conference that was not very good at that time.
Well, he led the nation in turnovers his junior year. And, that's just ridiculous. I mean, you're going to draft this guy as high as they did when he led the entire nation in turnovers, 13 interceptions, and, a slew of fumbles. He only completed 60% of his passes. And let's be honest, he had tons of talent out there in USC when he was throwing the ball. I mean, they had receivers galore, and they couldn't get over the hump because he, was a problem. And why they drafted him, I'll never know. And why Carolina traded for this guy, I cannot answer.
Especially if you saw, especially right in front of you, how Mark Sanchez was overvalued coming out of USC because of all the talent that he surrounded him out there. I mean, you had a perfect example of it.
Right. And as we just mentioned, all those years in New York, I never once saw a game where I was like, oh, this guy's really got it. I mean, he just never really could do anything. He always had double-digit interceptions every year of his career. He just couldn't make the throws, and a lot of the plays he made were just boneheaded mistakes that cost his team the game.
I'll be fair with him about one thing. There was 2 games that stood out while he was with the Jets where he played well. One was his first game. He threw a pick 6 on his first throw, but then he bounced back. But that was against Detroit.
Yeah.
And Detroit at the time was a mess. Next, he played a really good game. I think it was in his second year against Dallas at the Meadowlands. But you take those 2 games away from him, there's nothing. There's no highlight film of this guy.
2 words.
Yeah.
2 words. 17 and 32. Yeah. That's Sam Darnold's record as a starter. 17 and 32. I mean, that's all you really need to say. The team just doesn't win when this guy plays because he's not that good.
No, not at all. And then we're going to go down to Atlanta, another team that's but at least they're committed to rebuilding. You got Marcus Mariota, and you went out and got Desmond Ridder. I mean, Ridder was really good at Cincinnati, but it is Cincinnati. But I mean, he won there. He won a lot of games there. So I mean, what do you think about? Is this a long-term Mariota chance, or is he just holding the seat for Ridder?
Honestly, I think he's holding the seat for next year. I mean, the Atlanta team is just destined to not be good this year. I mean, I'm sorry. I'm not liking what I'm seeing in this roster. They've been even going back to when they went to the Super Bowl and blew that huge lead. They've been mortgaging themselves a cash that they just can't a check they can't cash because they've been putting stuff on credit cards. They've been kicking the can down the road, and they haven't been able to, get rid of any of those contracts until now. They're paying $63 million for four players that aren't even on the roster. And two of them are Julio Jones and Matt Ryan. So that's, almost 60%. 30% of their cap are guys that aren't even on the team. So there's just not a whole lot they can do. I honestly feel like with the amount of money they had available, Mariota is a pretty decent option. But I don't expect this team to be, having too much success, and they're going to put all the blame on him, unfortunately. And this may be his last chance as a starter.
Yeah, you people. Hopefully, when you got your lawnmower and air conditioner, because the prices at Home Depot just went up.
Well, there's no doubt because they're gonna have to spend some money next year, but they're gonna have it after this year. All that money is off the books. Julio Jones is off the books. Matt Ryan is off the books. All those guys. Dante Fowler Jr. is finally off the books after this year, so they can finally start getting some guys and accumulating some talent. And let's be honest, they've also had some bad luck. Calvin Ridley taking a mental year last year and then getting suspended for the entire year this year. This guy was supposed to be the heir apparent to Julio Jones, and now he's not even available for 2 years. That's very bad luck for the Falcons. So they've had some things go wrong, and they finally just decided to go ahead and let Matt Ryan go and to start the rebuild from the ground up. And I appreciate that they're admitting it and doing it the right way.
Exactly. And with the fact that we know that Tom Brady's heading for the announcers booth next year, it's good to start the clock this year and be ready for next year. So, and with New Orleans is reassessing, even though they've got Jameis back, and we just talked about Carolina being a mess. So, yeah, it's a good time to get a head start on your rebuild.
Yeah, I mean that's why Tommy decided to come back. I think he sat down after he made after Adam Schefter made the announcement for him. He sat back and thought, man, what am I doing? I can be even worse next year and still beat all these teams because Atlanta and Carolina are in the crapper, and New Orleans Saints. Sean Payton's gone, and New Orleans had tons of cap problems. So the Bucs are definitely in good shape.
Yeah, we'll see what happens there. We've only got like 10 minutes left, so let's get to the NBA playoffs. You wanted to hit on that. I know talk about the Bucks last night, sneaking one out on the Celtics. Talk about that series.
Man, that game last night was just crazy. It really felt like the Celtics had that game won, and then the Bucks came roaring back in the fourth quarter. To me, it was more a factor of the Celtics choking than it was the Bucks. I mean, the Bucks played good. Don't get me wrong. I'm giving the Bucks credit. They did a great job. They played a really good fourth quarter, outscored the Celtics 33-21. But even though they played that well, the Celtics still had a chance to win. As I mentioned to you, they were up by 2. With 16 seconds left, they fouled Giannis. He was on the line for 2 free throws, made the first, missed the second, and then they couldn't get the damn rebound. And Bobby Portis gets the rebound, puts it in, and gives the Bucks the lead. And then, Marcus Smart turned the ball over twice in a row down the stretch. And I just don't understand, where the hell was Jason Tatum or Jaylen Brown, and why weren't those guys? Why didn't they have the ball in their hands? I mean, I don't understand it, and I think there was some coaching mistakes down the stretch with the Celtics. And we all know the winner of Game 4 goes on to win the series 82% of the time. So the Bucks are in a real good place right now, especially considering Chris Middleton is not playing and is out injured. So the fact they're up 3-2 with Middleton on the shelf, I give the coach and the team a lot of credit right now, and that's the Milwaukee Bucks.
And up the road, we got Miami, number 1 seed. They're ahead of Philadelphia. What's going on in that series? Where's our Philadelphia 76ers? Is Doc Rivers going to take another blow to his playoff resume?
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. The first 2 games, obviously, Joel Embiid didn't play, and he was injured, took that elbow to the face, had the broken orbital bone, had the concussion, and couldn't play the first 2 games. And the Heat took advantage of it and just kicked the crap out of the Sixers. Embiid comes back. They win 2 games in a row. Harden plays better. And then you had Wednesday night. I can't explain it. I don't know what happened. Embiid didn't look right, and the rest of the team just played horrible, and they got blown out 120-85. So Miami's got the lead there 3-2, and they're in the driver's seat after that performance. I mean, Embiid only had 17 points in 33 minutes. Tobias Harris and James Harden chipped in 12 and 14 respectively, and the rest of the guys didn't even show up. And those three guys obviously didn't play great. So that was a horrible game for the Sixers, and they better show a lot more effort in the next game, or the series is going to be over right then.
Let's put this on the line. You got one coach for the series, Rivers or Spoelstra?
I'm taking Spoelstra. I got to be honest, man. I'm a big time believer of him, especially after what he did in the bubble with that team, where half the guys were injured and they went to the finals without half their team. I mean, Dragic was hurt, Adebayo was hurt. They were missing Hero at times. They had nobody out there, and he still found a way to game plan them. The Eastern Conference Championship. So I like Eric Spoelstra. I think he's done a tremendous job this year. And the guy gets no credit. He wins those titles with LeBron and the boys, and they give the players all the credit. But this guy has been the one constant from winning from that that group of guys to this group of guys. He's still getting it done no matter which players he's got.
Well, yeah, you got to give him credit because there's been no fall off.
Right.
That's the proof right there in front of you. I mean,
one of the greatest players of all time leaves, and you're in the damn finals 2 years later.
I compare it to when I got to give it to Pat Riley here, because Pat Riley, this goes with kind of Pat Riley. When you look at his coaching tree, two guys stick out for you: Spoelstra and Jeff Van Gundy was a really good coach in New York.
Yes,
I mean, it may have not worked out for him in the end, but Jeff Van Gundy, you can't. He's definitely not his brother. I mean, he's the smart Van Gundy. And, I mean, those guys are – it's amazing. Not ex-players. And they're kind of the old school guys who couldn't play the game but just love the game, and through being the tape heads and doing all the little things to work their way up the coaching tree and become like the good assistant coach, they became great head coaches. And it's really a great story.
Well, I mean, can we give the guy some credit for what he's done? He's been named one of the 15 greatest coaches in NBA history, and probably should be higher than that, considering in the years he's been the head coach in Miami, they've won 5 Eastern championships and 2 NBA titles. So he's got 2 NBA titles and 5 Eastern Conference championships just in the years that he's been the head coach. So you nailed it on the head. I mean, Pat Riley deserves credit for finding this guy and then believing in him to be the head coach. And I really like him and the way that he can put a game plan together to win you a game.
So funny how everybody made fun of him, said it, it was like Pat Riley's pulling the strings. Little did they know. Yeah. Let's go out west. We got Phoenix. We got Dallas. Had a little uproar over Chris Paul's family in the stands the other night, but we got them, and we got Phoenix up 3-2 right now.
Go ahead. I was just going to say, I mean, that game was just weird. It felt like the refs were like trying to have Dallas win that game. I mean, Chris Paul fouled out for the 4th time in his career. Okay, this guy's been playing basketball in the NBA for a long time. He just doesn't foul out. And
right.
He had 6 fouls. I was cheering for the Mavericks. 3 of those could potentially have been called fouls. The other 3, I have no idea what they were doing, and they weren't even close to being fouls on him. So it was just weird. And that game, I think, was an anomaly, because now Phoenix came back and won by 30 the next game, and they're up 3-2 and in the driver's seat. And if Devin Booker's hitting shots, the Suns are winning. I mean, that's the way it comes down. I don't care who's playing on the other team. With the talent that the Suns have, if Devin Booker's scoring 30, they're going to win.
And then on the other half, we got Memphis and of course, the Warriors. The dawning of the days of Ja Morant. They're behind in the series 3-2 right now. I mean, Golden State has the experience, but talk to me about this series and the dawning of John Morant.
Yeah, I mean, John Morant was. I was a true believer that Ja was going to lead the Grizzlies to the victory in this series until he got hurt, and now that it was just a really unfortunate incident because Ja is out for the rest of the playoffs, and I just don't feel like the Memphis has enough to get it done. But then last night came about, and Memphis goes out and blows out the Warriors 134-95 with no job. And I just couldn't believe it. I really was blown away. It was a complete team effort. Jaren Jackson Jr. had 21. Tyus Jones, Ja Morant's replacement, had 21. Bain had 21. They got contributions off of five guys had 9 points or more off the bench. It was just a complete and utter team effort. And I really have no explanation for how it happened because I got to be honest, I figured that would be it last night. I did. I thought it was over. It was 3-1 and no Ja Morant. I was like, they're done. And they came out and played a hell of a game and proved that they're more than just Ja Morant on this team.
All right, looking ahead, what are we thinking? Phoenix against Milwaukee, Phoenix against Miami. What do you think? Or you think Golden State has enough to get through?
I think I'm picking the Suns right now. I really am. I just like their depth. I like the way they play as a team. Golden State can score, and they can score in bunches. But Golden State's problem is that they're not good on defense. And if they're not knocking down shots, meaning Klay Thompson and Steph Curry aren't both scoring 30 points, they're in trouble. They're in trouble because they're not that good on defense. Besides Draymond Green, the rest of those guys can't really cover anybody up. So I think in a series with Phoenix and Golden State, I'm taking Phoenix. I like them a little bit better in the West.
I also like to see Chris Paul finally get one. What do you think about Miami and Milwaukee?
I would say Milwaukee, but you got to give credit to Spoelstra, like we said. I mean, this guy is coaching. Just doing an amazing job right now and getting it done. And I would pick the Bucks, except for the fact that I need to see Middleton out there. Without Middleton, the Bucks are still a good team with the pieces they have, and of course with their mega superstar Giannis. They're good. But they're a great team when they have Middleton and Giannis out there with the rest of the guys. Drew Holiday showed last night that he is one of the best defensive guards in all of the NBA. As I mentioned, Marcus Smart took the ball down twice in a row, got blocked by Drew Holiday, and then the next time down to try and tie it up, he got the ball stolen away by Drew Holiday. So there is some teams that can still play defense in the NBA, especially at crunch time, and the Bucks are one of them because they've got Giannis down low and they've got Drew Holiday guarding their best guard.
And they've won. So they've been there. They've done that. So, I mean, that does go a long, long way. Overall, last subject, LeBron James not being in the playoffs. How much does it hurt kind of the credibility of the playoffs at all?
I think it does. I think it feels like something's missing. And, I got to be honest, I'm not really 100% sure why the Lakers were so bad this year. I mean, LeBron played well. You got Anthony Street Clothes Davis, who just can't stay healthy. You've got Russell Westbrook, who's just not the same guy for whatever reason. And then the rest of the guys just couldn't put it together. Carmelo is a shell of himself and, just doesn't have it any longer to really put solid minutes out there. And the Lakers were a disappointment. And I really feel like you put the Lakers in the West right now, this is a more exciting playoffs. I mean, whether you love or hate LeBron, people love to talk about him and people love to watch him play basketball. So I feel like the playoffs are suffering a little bit just because there is no Lakers and because there is no LeBron. Well,
and like you said, you lose Ja Morant. There's a guy who would have brought some, people in to watch. Is this the next guy? Is this going to be the superstar of the future? Zion Williamson hasn't turned out to be anything yet because of injuries, but Ja Morant has shown that he's going to be as long as he stays healthy, one of the next great players in the NBA. And you got Giannis, you got Embiid, you got Luka. You have some young players, but there also is something to be said for the guys we watched for 10, 15. I mean, and when Michael first left, the playoffs weren't as popular. I remember, people watched, but the casual guys wouldn't tune in because they were like, well, Michael's not there. So that's what you lose.
Yeah, and I feel like, it would be easier to swallow if LeBron didn't have the year that he had. I mean, this guy's still at his age. I know he's only 37, which isn't ancient, but he's logged a lot of years out there in the
37 NBA. He logged a lot of minutes in those 37 years.
He went to the finals 10 years in a row.
Yeah.
And, he's been in the NBA since he was 18, 19 years old. So this guy, you would think, would start to show signs of breaking down, but really he had a great season. It just was the rest of the crew that couldn't help him out.
Yeah. We'll see what happens as it goes on. I've been watching my little hockey playoffs, and tomorrow night the Rangers got a chance to even up and get it to a Game 7, which is always some of the greatest things in sports and NHL playoffs, Game 7. But the legend of Louis Domingue is hanging over their head, the man in Pittsburgh who's come off the bench, and, of course, Sid the Kid. So we'll see what they can do tomorrow night. But anyways, what do we got coming up on man coverage this week?
I don't know yet, actually. We're going to see what the weekend brings. We might take a couple weeks off. I've got to get up to New York for a little travel.
Hey, come on
coming
up.
So I'm heading up to the East Coast, and then I'm going to the beach. So we may be taking a couple weeks off as things are kind of slowing down for college football right now.
Yeah, you need a little vacation. So anyways, people, thanks for tuning in tonight. We'll be back next week. Nate, you have a good weekend. Keep an eye on those playoffs, and I'll keep an eye on the NHL. And we'll be back next week.
Sounds good, buddy. Have a good one.
All right, bye.